Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chris and Andre Show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Chris and Andre Show. We're super glad you joined us. This is episode 81, and I'm just going to start by saying we're glad you're here. We just spent the last 20 minutes or so dealing with technical difficulties, and I am super pissed.
Yeah, this is a great way to start the podcast, is with Andre having a bunch of technical difficulties on his side. None of which seem to be solved by any of the troubleshooting / problem solving that we came up with in the 20 to 30 minutes. I think Andre has some strong feelings towards his friends at Apple and their recent update. It sounded like you also have some strong words and thoughts for our friends at Microsoft and their Windows platform.
Oh, man. Well, the only positive,
but as usual, we're gonna make the most out of this. We're still here doing a podcast episode. We have no idea what the quality of said podcast episode will be. It'll probably, I can't imagine it'll be that much lower than it usually is. That's setting the bar high for us.
I'll tell you what. I installed Monterey. I was going to pull out my Linux laptop that I keep just in case. I ended up using a Windows laptop, and I hate Windows. I can't. I don't care Windows 11. I don't care what they do to Windows. They just can't make me use it without having just the most god-awful feeling. Nothing works the way as intended.
No, it's the bane of my existence and the low point in my day whenever my parents struggle with something on their computers, and I have to step in to try and help. Because first off, they have their scroll reversed, whatever mine is. I'm the weirdo that scrolls down to go down. And they have theirs inverted, and so I'm always going the wrong direction. I'm clicking left click when I don't mean to, because they have the weird divided keyboard or trackpad thing where it's got a left click and a right click at the bottom. I'm always trying to go to the top left when I need to go to the bottom left. Trying to get to this is a whole technology rant right here, but trying to get to the Windows Explorer is now a huge pain. My mom had some, anti-tracking software that got installed on her computer somehow, and it kept asking her for a subscription, and she was like, I just don't want, every time I turn it on, it just pops up. And so I'm trying to get to add remove software, and it's just the biggest pain and I was just this, I hate this. This is why. And the moment that I was, when I got a work laptop and it was a Windows machine, I was just I hate this. I'm just going to use my personal laptop as my work laptop.
Yeah, I just can't, man. And, for some of the things I do, I need to use Windows. And I try not to bash the tool, and it's not even that. I use Linux for the last, it's my daily driver for almost 6 years. And
yeah,
I was sworn against the Mac, and now it's just that's how much I hate Windows. I just can't. Nothing makes sense when you use Windows. Even when I write software that has to compile, that's one of the reasons why I have a Windows computer at ready is sometimes I compile stuff to work on Windows. Nothing works the way it should work.
Shocking.
It's just
I am shocked. This is my shock day.
So anyway, oh, man.
You want to talk about some
sports?
Yeah,
let's go.
All right, sports.
Well,
so I'll let you kick things off since your team is the one that's made the biggest news lately.
And it's not going to get any better. How on God's green earth do you trade Von Miller to the Rams for anything?
Because you recognize that at 4-4 with Teddy Bridgewater as your quarterback and Vic Fangio as your head coach, that your team has no legitimate chance at making the playoffs. Which is, it's waving the white flag 8 games into the season.
In the wrong direction.
It's Yeah, I guess. I don't, which direction do you want to wave the white flag? You mean like one last lap?
I mean, I am so disappointed with where the Broncos started out. Like, even with Teddy Bridgewater as the starting quarterback, I've never been for that. This is the only year, and with the exception, I think, of 2007 or 2008. Between there. No, between 2006 2007, one of those 2 years, are the only year I don't own Madden. That's how disappointed I am with the decisions that the Denver Broncos are making. I don't want to even have to start Madden up and replace the playbook, replace the quarterback every game. That's how much I don't believe in Vic Fangio. That's how much I don't believe in Teddy Bridgewater. And I'm not saying I'm an athlete at his level. I'm just saying, like, he's not the right quarterback.
No, I mean, I think that's, I don't know what the underlying issue is in Denver. Like I think it's they obviously, like, they've drafted some good players.
Yeah.
I mean, you had Von Miller, you've got Bradley Chubb, who's unfortunately been injured this
season.
season.
You've got Jerry Jeudy. You've got a great receiving core.
Cortland Sutton. You need a quarterback, which you've struggled to kind of find. And you need an offensive line. And, I mean, unfortunately, that's what a lot of NFL teams are. It's like, we just had a quarterback and an offensive line.
But you've got the right pieces in place. It's anyway. That's where I'm at. I'm really disappointed. No, I don't want to go too far into that because, like, my season was over when Teddy Bridgewater he had the first snaps, and I wanted to be supportive, but I was just like, I don't see him as being that great. I mean, look, I've got Geno Smith starting for the Seahawks, and I think you could argue that he's as good, if not better, than Teddy Bridgewater. He's won a game, like he beat the Jags, but did you see that Seattle returned an onside kick for a touchdown in the game against the Jaguars? Like, the Jags tried an onside kick in Seattle. Like, Travis Homer, I think he's a fullback, just snagged the ball and busted through two guys' tackles and charged into the end zone for a touchdown. I'll be honest. The only thing I've got going now is, like, reading the trades and just getting frustrated. And I did see the article that you mentioned about Phillip Rivers wanting to go back.
Yeah.
I was like,
he's like, if the Saints called me, I'd go play. I mean, and it's not. Look, I don't think that anybody should, but it's not like, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be completely shocked.
I'll say this, and that's for, like, the three teams we mentioned. Actually, the two. Well, actually, I think that Russell's got probably 2 or 3 years left. So I don't want anybody to jockey for his position, but I mean, the people Denver's picked, the people that quite a few teams picked, like the Texans are kind of trying to figure what they're going to do with about Deshaun. You've got people rolling on who's Carolina's quarterback? I can't remember his name.
Sam Darnold. Yeah, they're done with him now.
And Kaepernick is still in the wings. That's all I'm going to say.
I know. And I was just sitting here thinking, like, if you're the Saints, would you rather have the least mobile version of Phillip Rivers, the gunslinger, or, like, Colin Kaepernick as your quarterback at this point? And, I mean, like, I'm a freaking Phillip Rivers diehard homer, and, like, I'd probably take Colin Kaepernick. Like, I don't even know that that's a probably at this point.
He was never a bad quarterback. Like, that's my thing with everybody that, all the pundits that kind of discount him. I'm like, tell me a reason why he couldn't play. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all. Like,
I mean, the whole thing with, like, the way that he got treated at the end
And blacklisted.
in San Francisco. Yeah, and then completely. And you're telling me there's not a single email amongst the stuff from John Gruden and Bruce Allen and everybody else in the NFL that talked about Colin Kaepernick? Nobody in the entire NFL had any thoughts about Colin Kaepernick at any point over that time period?
I don't know.
I don't think so. Like, not happening. I swear to God, Riverside. Oh.
Yeah, I might have to write them a nice scathing email because I'm not. I don't know. Well, I know my issues are definitely it's an Apple problem, but guys, fix your problem.
So I haven't watched any of the World Series because I don't care about baseball like that. But I'm like secretly pulling for the.
That hurts my heart to hear you say that.
I understand. I'm sorry. Baseball has never, like, I watch highlights of baseball, but you can't pay me to sit down and watch a game on TV. In person, I'll go. Like, take me to a Bulls game, and I will enjoy it. But I don't know. Watching baseball on TV is one of my least favorite.
Really?
I'd rather watch golf.
Wow, that is so un-American.
White.
Well, tonight... I am trying to not. I am trying.
I mean, I knew it when I said it. I was like, oh, that's like the whitest thing you've ever said, Chris. I'd rather watch golf than have to look at these slightly brown people and.
Well, Game 6 is tonight, and I'm excited, and I hope they beat the Braves. And this is the reason
you're pulling for the Astros because you love a good cheater.
First of all,
you're a Carolina fan, so obviously you're gonna pull for the.
They didn't cheat. I think that's all. What my youngest son was telling me.
You don't think the Astros cheat?
No, I don't. My youngest son was. We were talking about that last week, as a matter of fact, and I said, look. What they try to call cheating at the Astros is no different from the fact that you're not supposed to call pitches. But every time you watch any game, you watch the catcher do what? He signals.
Right.
So it's like you can't have these BS.
Look, I mean, again, I'm not a baseball fan. But I understand. Like, there's obviously sometimes kind of that blurry line between gamesmanship, right? Like trying to get as much of an advantage as you can within the rules, and where it starts to cross into like what most people consider to be cheating. And I'm not here to say where the Astros' behavior falls on.
But you call them
line.
Cheaters.
But I will call them cheaters all day long. No, I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't really care. I guess I'm just tired of, can we just have it be like, you're either cheating is allowed or it's not. Like, I feel like there should be no rules. There should be, or we have to enforce all the rules to the strictest intent. There's an all or nothing. I don't know. It's just,
all right, that is the widest thing you said.
No. Hear this though. Like, why don't we allow professional athletes to take performance-enhancing drugs?
I personally don't see a problem with that.
Right? That's something that I've never understood.
Right.
Like, shouldn't we want to see them at their, like, the peak of whatever they can achieve? Like, certain things are okay. And it's at the point now where, they've basically said, okay, we know exactly what the thresholds are for testing positive. And so all I have to do is not have any of it in my system, but make sure that when I go to test, I only have but so much in my system.
Well, I remember.
Like, is that gamesmanship or is that cheating?
I don't really care. Like, at the end of the day.
I don't care when it comes to performance-enhancing drug stuff. I don't know. Like, the baseball stuff, I feel like baseball is one of those sports where people are like, oh, you have to protect the
integrity of the game.
Sanctity, the integrity of the game. Baseball is it's the American pastime, and you can't bat flip, you can't posture. There's no celebrating in baseball. feel like I'm in a Tom Hanks movie now.
Yeah, I don't care. I think that like I want them to beat the Braves because Trump showed up at the Braves game in game 5, and they gave him a booth. Now, I get he's an ex-president, but he's Hitler. I just don't care.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
I mean, that's a fair enough reason. And then they got the whole tomahawk chop.
I mean,
thing.
I'm like, there's a lot of things about the Braves where, like, I've never liked the Braves. My 1 and 2 teams have always been Yankees and the A's, but the A's have kind of like lost a lot of luster because they're just not the same team.
Yeah.
Oakland
was my team, like growing up.
I think Houston can be my.
I don't have a team now because I don't. Oh no, that's not true. The Dodgers are my team.
Oh,
now.
I can't.
Well, that's because that's where Trey Turner is.
Yeah.
I kind of pull for the White Sox too because that's where they got Carlos Rodon. Did you know both those guys played at NC State?
Yeah, I do.
State's a great school.
Anyway, it's almost college basketball season, and
it is, and I don't know whether to be excited or not. State played an exhibition game last night. They didn't have Manny Bates. There's like star center, and they only won by like 9.
I'm looking forward to Carolina, like dominating the ACC.
You think that's gonna happen? You think Hubie Davis is ready to?
He was an assistant. He was an assistant behind the guy who was a report.
Just because you assisted doing it doesn't mean that you're gonna be great at doing it.
I don't. Did you drink liquor tonight? Or like what kind of logic is that? Well, we're not talking we're not talking Dwight Schrute level assisting. We're talking like he was the.
All right, just because you got to my Office reference before I did.
At some level, like my brain is like, oh.
Well, you know. I mean, we've been doing this long enough. If you didn't know that was coming, I would have been very disappointed.
So I think Carolina's going to... I'm actually looking forward to college basketball because my football season is shot all to hell. Last thing about NFL. Please, no, it's not. Well, it's the last thing about the Broncos. Vic Fangio needs to go. Like that, I will say that.
He's done by the end of the season. I'll be surprised if he makes it past week 14.
Yeah, he's done.
I'm just throwing. I haven't looked at the schedule or anything. I just at that point, John Elway's going to be like, "Nah, man,
you got to go, dude. You're not helping us.
We got to start looking for a new coach."
I will say this: my daughter went to the state homecoming football game, and she was super excited.
Yeah,
and she told me all about it, and I was like, "Yay!" I was happy for my daughter because she was like, she's falling in love with NC State, right? And I think that in and of itself is like, I'm like, oh, that's dope. But I found myself challenged to get excited about State having to win.
I mean, yeah, like we weren't playing Carolina, so it's not my fault that they can't beat Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, I mean.
Do you want to blame the refs, or do you want to?
I don't know. I don't know who to blame. I just kind of look at it.
Do you want some suggestions?
Sure.
I can throw some out.
Sure.
Mac Brown would be one.
Yeah, I don't.
I tried to warn you.
I'm starting to get past my disillusionment of Mac Brown.
I mean, look, I get it. State has been mired in mediocrity for a long time. Like, we get excited at every little, inkling. Like, Mark Gottfried had us convinced that we had somehow, like, even though nobody else wanted this man, that somehow it was a perfect marriage at NC State. But, I think with Dave Doran, like, I'm not saying Dave's going to go win a national championship at State. I don't know that that's something anybody's necessarily ever going to come do. But I think he's built a really solid program. And this year, especially with all of the injuries that they've had on defense, they've continued to, the defense has continued to be the thing that has kept this team winning games. And so he's been able to develop a level of depth at talent. that state hasn't had for a very long time, which is, I think, when you're trying to build long term, that's what you want to go for.
So what you're saying is I'm right.
Of course, you're
in a long roundabout way. You're saying I'm right. So Doran is thinking about the long game. He's not thinking about the, where do I stand in the ACC. He's thinking about where do I actually place nationally. And that's kind of where I'm hinting at with Carolina in college basketball. You don't have to transition that much to kind of keep the same things going. I think State's recruitment in football, baseball, and basketball has actually gotten better over the last 3 years because people see them as being that exposure school again. So it's a lot about the coach and the relationships they can build, but it's also about building that foundation, which you're talking about, that says long term I can win. And I've seen it in those 3 programs, and I haven't looked at a lot of the women's sports at NC State, but I know their women's soccer team is actually doing consistently well as well.
The women's basketball team has been awesome since Wes Cunningham, I think, came to State. I mean, they are starting the season, ranked 11th. I think they've won back-to-back ACC championships, so they're going for a three-peat, which would be the first time I think State's ever done that.
The State's women's team, last year they played a Midwest team, right? Was it Kentucky or Kansas? I think.
I can't remember who it was that they played in the tournament.
So I look at it that way. I think if you can beat forget your conference. If you can go to your next competitive region and in that conference and beat their number ones consistently, that's the right program. So, again, I'm glad my daughter had a good time, so she's gonna have great memories and blah blah blah. So anyway, let's talk about some cookings.
Cooking.
You put it up there.
I did. I made a couple of delicious things recently that I wanted to toot my own horn out. So I'll go in reverse order. Most recently, on Halloween, I made vegan chili with like squash and zucchini, a whole bunch of peppers and onions, kidney beans, diced tomatoes. Very, very delicious. It's like a super easy recipe. My sister actually, I think, was the one who gave it to me originally. But very tasty chili. It's just that time of year.
How does chili taste with zucchini?
I mean, by the time you cook it down, like the zucchini tastes like chili.
Okay.
It all kind of tastes like chili.
The squash,
I feel like the zucchini.
The squash I can envision. The zucchini, I was like, So that's cool.
It all kind of cooks together, so you don't. I just like it as a way to dump a bunch of vegetables in, and kind of not have to like worry about each one tasting particularly unique or. It's a way for me to trick myself into eating more vegetables, basically.
Okay.
Speaking of which, I also have my loaded baked potato soup recipe, where I actually make baked potatoes and then cut them up, mash them up, and then I have a roasted cauliflower that I mix with it. And you get the immersion blender, so chop it all up with a bunch of onions and garlic and yummy stuff like that. That one's pretty good.
Do you have a recipe you can share, possibly on the website?
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, when I saw that, I'm like, that sounds good. But I want to kind of backtrack because I made a vegan chili.
Yeah.
And I don't overload it with a lot of vegetables, but that does sound kind of tasty. I love vegan chili. This is the time of year where I would eat stew or chili or... it's just nice, hearty meals, just to stay full.
Exactly. and warm.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, but yeah, my vegan chili, the only thing I do differently is I actually put TVP in it, and it gives it that.
Okay.
That is like go to.
That's your new. Yeah, you've been on that TVP train for a
Oh,
while
man,
now.
it's so dope. It's so dope. Like because you get that whole ground chuck feeling, or diced turkey or whatever it may be. So
Yeah.
yeah, but cool. Yeah.
And then the day before Halloween, we went to Panacea. Our
Oh man,
favorite
I love that
restaurant down
place.
here.
So I'm gonna do a shout out to Panacea.
Yep.
Mind blowing. Their McRib type sandwich, freaking amazing. So
Yeah, the riblet hoagie is my favorite item on their regular menu by far.
I dream about it. I think
I have to like convince myself to get something else when I
Oh.
go there a lot of the times because it's like I try to, if they've got a special that sounds good, I'll usually try the special, but it's like then I'm also just like it's been 2 trips here since I've had the riblet hoagie. Like I got to get the riblet hoagie, and I was like, Chris, you've been here 4 times this week. Like it was just 3 days ago that you had that riblet hoagie.
So for our audience, Chris actually Panacea catered their wedding, and we'd had lunch there before we brought the food back to the location. It was so good. The menu was so spot on. I had to like compliment the chef and the owner. I guess he and the owner, like they're partners, right?
Yep.
It was
Yeah.
so spot on. Like I could eat there every day, like literally every day.
It's amazing food. The staff is very attentive. It's good people, and so every year for the last I think 3 or 4 years, they have put on this Happy Healthy Halloween, where it's designed for kids that have like specific food allergies or families that are vegan, and so they have several like treats and that are vegan and usually gluten free that the kids can come and do some trick-or-treating. They have their expanded space that they just opened up.
Oh, really?
Which is more of like an event space up front, yeah. And there they had like a little mini like makers market. So they had like local artisans and shops and stuff like that that had little booths set up, again, with like little trinkets or, candy for the kids to take. And then we're also displaying their wares. So they did like a whole thing, and so we went and had dinner on Saturday, and then Helena got to put on her giant inflatable dinosaur costume, which was like the highlight of Halloween this year. It's not like that standard, like the one that you've seen in all the TikTok videos and stuff like that. The brown
My daughter
one.
has, yeah.
Yeah, no, this one was like I found it on Amazon. Christy, I think, actually found it and sent it to me. But it's like a cartoony dinosaur.
Oh, that's so dope.
And it's like 6 feet tall, and her head is like underneath the chin of the T-Rex, and it's got this long inflatable tail. I'll send you pictures afterwards because it's just absolutely hilarious. But everywhere that we went for every Halloween event the whole weekend, people were like, "Oh my God, that's an amazing costume!" and like wanting to take pictures of it, and like with her, it was like we were at Disneyland and she was Mickey Mouse walking around.
That is so
like,
dope.
It was a funny, and she was just all about it. She was just like, yeah, come take my picture. And like little kids would be like all scared. She'd be like, "Hi, I'm not a real dinosaur." Like
That is so dope.
dinosaur.
So
Like
let me kind of tie all this back together. Aside from like my little buddy's Halloween adventure, who I love in this, if you're ever in Wilmington, Panacea is a spot. If you're a vegan, or this, you have to be a
their
vegan.
whole
They have
thing
great
is
food.
like trying
And
to
they're many-
introduce people who aren't necessarily vegan into what vegan food can be. Like
It's a
taking
dope
things that you're
experience.
used to
It's
eating,
kind of like the
the riblet hoagie and making it vegan.
yeah. It's not. It's like it's a good experience. It's kind of like how we gushed about the vegan community kitchen here in Apex. Those are 2 spots where it changes your whole dynamic on what food can be, and understanding that it's not about necessarily the contents, but we always look for the flavor
That was the
profile.
thing. So their special on Saturday night for their big Halloween event was the Devil's Lettuce Burger. So it had a kale slaw on top of it with fried jalapenos, American cheese, and what was the other? There was something else spicy. Oh, hot sauce. on a pretzel bun. Like, oh my, like it was so. I devoured that thing. It's the first time I've ever finished my food before Christy. Like,
but I don't like slaw.
so that's
slaw
like
is not
the
my
kale
thing.
slaw. Like at first I didn't even realize it was slaw because it was just like it was just this big like frilly kale thing, and then I was like, oh,
Right.
this is the slaw. Okay, like it was. I don't know. It was legit.
Their chef there is actually amazing.
Shout out to Panacea. You guys rock.
Yeah, this is your free commercial. So we might give you a segment and share that with you just for giggles. Absolutely. Because I super love that place. Well, that's it for cooking. Let's go to life. So I sent you a link, I think last week. Trevor Noah, who's been doing some amazing interviews. Well, his team actually did this, I guess, I don't know how to describe it, just a video about, in context. Let me back up. The young lady that was missing and found dead, I don't remember her
Gabby
name.
Petito.
She was all over the news. Yeah. And the premise of it is, why is it that unless you're white, you're not found or you don't get the same media attention? And it was, although kind of gruesome when you think about it, because that's a real life event. And as a parent, my heart goes out to her. But you don't get the same national coverage. I mean, every day of Gabby Petito, like everywhere. And I think that's sad. I personally just I sit back and last week I saw a young lady. She's of Asian descent. She was missing from New Jersey. Her body was found in California. But the only reason I found out about it was because I just happened to be looking through my Google News feed, and there was I follow stuff in New York and New Jersey, and that's it. So my question to the world is, why? Do you have to have blonde hair, blue eyes, or pumpkin spice latte to get the same level of concern about a missing child in this country?
I mean, apparently, it's certainly not the way that it should be. I think, is the underlying point, right? Like there shouldn't be a weight applied to any of those missing people in terms of the amount of coverage that they get, really. They all deserve equal coverage in that sense. I don't know if it's I mean, I think, the media, certainly the media sources play a role in it, in that's what they feel like gets the best response or the biggest response. And so that's what they cater to. I don't know that that's necessarily true, but for whatever reason, that seems to be the stereotype or the assumption, right? Is that, the media and news stations hype up these, missing white women when there are, dozens or hundreds of indigenous and women of color that have been missing for much longer, right? I mean, there were. So
I just want to say this. Can we stop saying people of color and just to say non-white? People of color actually makes my blood boil a little bit. I'm like, what the hell does that mean?
No, you're good.
I'm sorry, but because that's a rabbit hole for me. It's people of color.
But yeah,
what does that mean?
I don't know. What's the solution, right? It'd be nice if we could just have all of these women not go missing all the time, right? Ideally,
sure.
In the meantime, there's not enough time to cover every single missing person. So ultimately, how do you pick and choose the ones that you are going to cover? Is it a matter of we just don't cover anybody then? I'm not saying that what they're doing now is right, but I don't know how you solve it or how we even start to approach some sort of solution to that.
I'll tell you this. Like, I could take any one of the locations I used to be in charge of, and if I put a new manager in that location, I could almost guarantee you within 60 to 90 days, the makeup of that location represented the manager. People hire, they interview, they accept people that look like them and they can relate to. Why would the media be any different?
So you feel like it's because the media is full of white women? Or it's full of men who murder and make white women disappear?
It could be both.
Sorry.
Both things don't have to be false. It could be that you can have white men that have white daughters. It could be that you have white women that, are white women. And so, yes,
wait,
it's
not
not
white women that are white women?
but both. You know what I mean? So the producers of these shows and the newsrooms, I mean, they may definitely connect to that story, right? The producers of these stories could have a daughter, and predominantly these producers and the editors of most newsrooms are white. So but I'm also not trying to vilify them. I'm just saying, ask yourself a different question.
You're not saying that, they're sitting there going, well, we have two stories to run, the missing black girl and the missing white girl. Let's never mention the missing black girl, and let's only talk about missing white women. It's not done, maliciously, but it's still something that's obviously being impacted, right, by people's choices or the people who are in those roles and what they feel comfortable with.
And I would also say, accept your bias. And bias isn't not necessarily equal racism, but we do have a tendency to have a bias. I have biases, and or is it biases?
Bison.
It doesn't matter. I have bison. So with my bison, I'm definitely prone, unless I'm aware of it, to make certain decisions. But I'm aware of it, so I can correct myself quickly. So I'm just saying, and sure, people may not like what I'm saying.
But those are racist
atrocious,
people, obviously.
It's atrocious that, it's atrocious this young lady died, but it's atrocious if anybody dies. It's atrocious if anybody. And then this kid, I didn't really follow the story because honestly, I tuned it out.
But then the guy that was the prime suspect, the boyfriend, right, then goes missing, and he continues to get coverage. Where's Brian Laundrie? Did you check the laundromat down the street?
The hamper?
Your joke was better.
And apparently this kid's dead.
I hate to step into Chris's conspiracy, crazy, kooky, whatever corner. I find it really hard to believe that his parents are like, he's in this park, and they never find him, and then they're like, we're going to go here one day. Oh, look, there's a bone. There's just enough, dental that we can determine it's him and some of his random belongings. But it's not, I don't know. It doesn't seem like they found a full
I don't care.
skeleton. I just don't.
I
understand.
I still,
I know.
to this day.
It's.
I've come to this. I know I'm super dismissive about that.
No,
and it's not because I don't value life.
Ultimately, that dude probably killed Gabby Petito. So should we really care what ultimately happened to him? If he decided to go out into the woods and off himself and get eaten by alligators, okay, at least he's not gonna hurt anybody else.
Next.
I have issues with the death penalty and stuff like that, but if you do something crappy and you decide to go take your own life, whatever. Anyways,
I saw this video today.
Yeah,
I don't want to talk. All right, let me sum that up. I believe that we should be trying to find everybody. If we have the quote unquote platform to do so, let's do it. So if you're out there and you're like, hey, for whoever listens to us, I mean, I'm a parent and I would want somebody to look for my kids. So I would say, hey, if you know somebody that's missing, we'll do our best to definitely put a word out. Just we can do our own part. But I did see a video today. This young lady, I can't remember her name.
I watched.
It was on YouTube.
I watched the whole thing, and she's not wrong. I don't mean. I guess I totally interrupted your setup of it. If you would.
It's no setup. The title is "I Hate Feminist Hollywood," and here's why. Go ahead.
I mean, essentially, it's what she's saying is that the classic Hollywood tropes that were applied to men in the 80s and 90s essentially got carried over to the strong female leads, quote unquote, that we see now, in that they're emotionless, they never do anything wrong, they always win. And then it's always some man, ends up being the villain most of it. And I mean, I don't disagree. It's people always used to talk about Joss Whedon and the strong female leads that he wrote. And I'd look at Buffy the Vampire Slayer and I'm like, she was basically useless without Spike or Angel or Xander or the, Professor dude, whatever. She was constantly ending up in situations where she was relying on other people to get her out. I don't consider that generally to be a strong female lead. And then there was River from Firefly. And people are like, oh, she's a strong female lead. I'm like, yeah, but she was a psycho whose brother had to save her and then, basically keep her hidden from the evil empire that was trying to find her. Spoiler alerts if you're haven't caught up on Firefly.
If you haven't watched a 12-year-old show.
And I like both of those shows. It's not to say that they're bad shows. I just wouldn't necessarily. I just feel like the strong female lead definition is super stupid and has been applied to a lot of stuff that I wouldn't.
That proves her point, though.
Yes, I agree. Sorry. That's where I was trying to get to, ultimately, is that so it's basically saying all of these things that used to be applied to male characters are now applied to female characters, and male characters are now allowed to be emotional and vulnerable and be wrong and all of this stuff, but we don't see that same type of opportunities for female characters. And I don't disagree with the sentiment. I think ultimately the video and the take is absolutely spot on. And I also loved the part at the end where it was talking about female directors, because I feel like that reminded me so much of Black AF, where they're talking about we got to be honest with each other, but I think there's truth in that. Just because a woman directed or produced the movie doesn't mean that the movie should be free from criticism. Now, I enjoyed Ocean's 8. Is it a perfect movie? No. But it was tropey as hell. But it's an Ocean's movie. All of those movies are tropey as hell.
It's fair. And I what I enjoyed about it was, I think she said the quiet part out loud. And she threw it out there into the void. I just happened to come across it, because as a man, right, I don't understand. I will never understand what it's like to be a woman. I can't. Nor do I try to. I can only relate my experience with women with my wife, my mother, my sister, my daughter, my nieces. And does compassion carry through and empathy carry through to each of those relationships? At the end of the day, just don't be a dick. I think that's a fair request to ask of society, especially Hollywood, because she made some interesting points about the damage it does to little girls with the whole Beauty and the Beast
right
insight. And I was like, that's interesting. Now, provided provided that you can actually say those things and kind of challenge the status quo, you'll get shut down. You'll get canceled for that. But I think she's making a very intellectually honest point of, wait a minute, why can't we just be seen as women?
And I agree with that. I will say
that's a
I was
valid
looking
question.
at like the side by sides of the dress. I didn't really understand like what changes had been made. I guess they looked almost identical to me from.
The color does. The makeup of the dress is completely different.
I don't know. I didn't see that much of a difference that I mean, I never noticed it when I watched the movie the first time.
Well, when I watched the animated version, I don't know why or when I watched it, but and then I heard the dialogue from Emma Watson, and the dress was part of her, her
and I get
which
like
kind of
calling that out in particular, like her making a big deal about it. I guess like if she hadn't specifically said something, I never would have looked at it and been, oh my gosh, they completely changed the dress for Belle. Like I would have just looked at it as the director, the costume designer's interpretation of the dress, which is how I looked at it when I first saw it. I don't know. It didn't matter that much to me because I didn't think that like the style and shape of that dress was ultimately going to. I mean, like. Is a little girl going to see that and go, oh, I guess I can't be Belle because Emma Watson doesn't want me to wear a pretty dress? Like, no, I don't.
The answer is yes, but she won't use those words because we put these people on pedestals, and that becomes the benchmark. That becomes the our true north as to what's acceptable. And I think she made a good point about you're transferring the quote unquote toxic masculinity
to women.
To women, and you have the forebears that actually continue on that same stupid cycle. It's so different than we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, yeah, but it's, or maybe I didn't mention it, but my daughter, we're listening to NPR, and some woman won an award, and everybody's all excited about it. I'm like, so what's so special about that? Like, when can we get to a point where those things aren't special? That they're just the norm.
I meant to put this on last week or the week before and forgot about it, but you bring it up, and so the ACC recently had their first female referee in football, and it was like groundbreaking moment as the SEC or the ACC has its first female and I'm like, okay, it's literally 2021, guys, like. Where have you been on this train? You telling me there wasn't a single woman out there that was interested in being a ref for ACC football prior to this year? I find that
ever
impossible to believe.
So we talked about the first NFL referee like a while ago, and I still feel the same way. It's like that's great, but it shouldn't be that special.
The first. I guess question for you: do you feel like it's the same thing when they say like the first black person to do this?
Yeah, I've actually been to that point for a long time. It's like, yeah, it's always going to be the first until you just realize, just stop being a dick.
It shouldn't be a matter of whether or not people were allowed. And that's the thing, right? Ultimately, is it's not like, oh, this is something brand new that just started yesterday, and everybody's had an equal opportunity to do this, and finally. Like a black man has stepped up to the plate, and it's like, no, for all we know, they've been more than capable of doing this for decades now, but just haven't had the opportunity, Dick. Like,
right? Yeah, stop being a dick. It's not that hard.
Speaking of being a dick, let's switch over to politics.
It's time for politics.
We'll talk about more of this later, but I'm starting to prune my I guess my quote unquote social media like streams and Google News. But I saw I've been getting better at it. Like intentional. And there's sometimes I'll see something, I'll just let it go. But now I'm like, no, I don't want to see this ever again. Please don't show this to me. But I saw Dan Crenshaw talking with Trevor Noah. And
more like Dan Crenshaw.
I still say he's like... he's. Do you have like the drum roll
I don't know if I can get
for the
to
joke
There
there?
it is. It'll probably play 3 times. Just
So he's still one part person, one part
part
politician, and still.
You don't know what's
Yeah.
under that eye patch.
That's. I can't support you when you do stuff like that.
You don't have to.
I feel even guilty for laughing, but he's still like 200% Republican.
Yeah.
And then I like delved into the comments because I'm a
Ooh.
masochist, and and I think the takeaway I have is that, and this is going to blur together with a lot of the notes I have. So the strings that politicians pull to get people to be open to their dialogue, they're like super complicated. But unless you're following the bouncing ball, and I don't know if for people that are younger, there was Schoolhouse Rock and like a bunch of animated things back in the day where they would play a song and they would put the words in the bottom and bounce a ball to kind
Just
of
a quick
let you
side
know
note
where
on
they're
that.
at.
They still use Schoolhouse Rock. My daughter was talking about how they watched I'm Just a Bill, or how a bill gets made
Really?
basically the other day on YouTube. And I'm like, I know that cartoon. She's like, how do you know that cartoon? And I'm like, that cartoon is older than I am, sweetheart.
You should you should tell her I know
She's
that
like,
cartoon.
Oh my god, that cartoon is old AF.
Because it's her, I won't give you one finger salute.
Anyways,
Anyway, it's interesting that his mother-in-law, his stepmother, is Peruvian, which is kind of cool. So I connected to him there.
Yeah.
He's fluent in Spanish. I am strong. I will never say I'm fluent in Spanish. I'm strong conversational Spanish, so I can connect to him there. He makes good points about immigration. He makes good points about climate change. But at the drop of a dime, because I'm pretty sure in the back of his mind he knows people are going to be watching this, he plays the Republican card.
he plays just enough to seem reasonable, but at the same time is using the dog whistle terms that Republicans have used for decades now to let the people that are watching that already on his side know, I don't really mean this stuff. I'm just saying it to try and get other people to vote for me. Like,
yeah, the thing that I thought was dismissive in his conversation was, I understand that, but what I'm saying is
I'm changing this.
And I'm paraphrasing.
I agree.
Yeah.
Those were the things where I was okay, well, you're not actually willing to address what the question is. And I think, like, ultimately, the good points that he was making, right, are things that any reasonable person agrees with. Like, you and I, while maybe we lean right now more on the Democratic side in terms of voting and where we align principle-wise, like, we're not liberal to the point where it's like, we don't need border control at all. Let everybody through.
Right.
No need to, like, no, that's not what, I don't know that anybody is really in favor of that, except for crazy anarchists, right? Like, yeah, I get it. Those people exist out there. It's the same thing with, like, gun control, right? We are not here to say nobody should have any guns at all. It's, let's talk about some reasonable gun, regulations, reasonable gun practices, safety, things that we can put in place to help reduce the number of accidental gun deaths. Like, can we start there, right? Before.
But why would we start the accidental when the intentionals are up?
Whatever. I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, the reasonable arguments that I feel like we hear from these Republican candidates that are trying to appeal to the centrists are things that they make it out like, oh, they're going to take all our guns. It's like, no, we just want reasonable gun control. Like, that's it. We want people that are buying guns to have to pass some sort of, like, background check, competency test. If you're going to drive a car and you need a license and you have to take a test every so often, then owning a legal killing machine should be the same thing. Like,
So I saw the comments, and I would just say to people, I'll give Crenshaw points for having for actually having
Sure.
the conversation, right? I'll give Trevor Noah a lot of points for understanding how to back off but still prove a point. He was very crafty in doing that, and I think a lot of people miss that in the comments.
He is an extremely talented interviewer, like an underrated interviewer. You know, I think
Screw being an interviewer. He's smart as hell.
He understands going into those things the angle that most of his guests are going to try and take, and I think he's very good at allowing them space to kind of say their piece, but then being able to redirect or to probe to prove his point. Even if he knows he's not going to get a straight answer, right? He knows I can lay out certain questions in a way that my audience will read the way that I know that they're going to interpret it, right?
The bad part about that is if that's your take, I think his angle was wrong, right? Because a lot of people were trying to they dismissed him as not asking or actually giving too many softball questions. So Trevor Noah, you'll probably never listen to this, but I would say that I think that you are talented in this area of asking questions for a dialogue. It's not about proving your point at the onset. It's about also being able to say, okay, I'm backing up, but let me just lay this here too. And he did that quite often in the interview. And I think that is a secret to consulting, right? I can't convince you of your point of view. Like, you've already decided that. I can just present you with new information. He did that multiple times in that interview, which was like A+ all the way around.
I would just say that I think
and even
you're right, and leave it at that.
Okay, fine, whatever. Yeah, but I know what you're doing. So remember, I'm following the bouncing. No, I would say to the people, and maybe this becomes a segment we throw on the YouTubes, right? I think Trevor Noah did a great job of. It's not about if he was litigating that case against Dan Crenshaw in the GOP, he would have had a conviction without having to press the point so many times. Because when you continue to press it, you lose the impact of what you're trying to prove. And I guess my summary would be this. When he quoted him almost word for word for what he said in a video about climate change, he said, "Oh, I never said that in a video." He said, "Oh, I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong." He didn't have to prove that. He basically backed up, and the fact checkers on the internet actually like crucified him on that. So it's like, that's pretty crafty. It's the art of a debate. It's the art of like playing chess. And so for Trevor Noah, Trevor, you're never listening to this. I'm pretty confident. But I think that is part of the debate we're missing in our borrowed democratic system in this country. And I applaud you for that, for what it's worth. So anyway, today I voted, and it was actually pretty quick. Yeah, it was super easy. Barely an inconvenience. Yeah, I was in and out in like 10 minutes. I didn't tell you this, but last week and last Saturday, I got somebody rang my doorbell, and I was in my office here, and I decided to take advantage of the technology. And I said, "Hey, hello, can I help you?" "Yes, we're with the Republican Party, and we just wanted to, like, at some point, actually, recently, I was, until 2020, so this tells me that voter registration is still way outdated. But actually, I understand their logic. I was a registered Republican, never meant I voted straight ticket, but I changed to an independent, and somebody rings my doorbell to say, we wanted to remind you to vote, and our town council is full of Democrats, and we want to get them out of there. So that way they can do some things that make sense. I was like, okay, thank you. And then today, you know what I did? I voted straight Democrat because...
Flawless victory.
Because just the audacity for somebody to tell me that without giving me any points of why I should just piss me off.
No, I mean, I understand. I went and voted today. Also, super easy, barely an inconvenience. Here at Carolina Beach, they have 2 open seats on the town council and the mayorship that were up for grabs.
Really?
So every single one of the town council candidates and every single one of the 2 mayoral candidates were set up outside the voting center on the island. And
Wow.
so I talked to almost every single one of them this morning before going in. My dad decided that that's what he wanted to do. I would have just walked past them all and gone in and voted. But the other day when I was picking up my kid from school, because we ride bikes to and from school now, one of the candidates was there campaigning at school because he is pitching himself as the candidate that cares about bike and pedestrian safety in Carolina Beach.
Oh, that's sweet.
And I guess for like the last 3 years, he's been head of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Council, or committee or something like that, and has been working and had all these things. And I talked to him for a few minutes, and I did a little bit more research on him when I got home, and ended up voting for him because I liked where he was, and I liked the answers that he gave when we were talking. Like I felt like I asked him some good questions based on what he talked about, and he had answers that I understood and that made sense based on the information that I have available. And like, all right, cool. But yeah, like I don't know. It's not that hard to vote, says the white guy.
Please vote. Yeah, I know, right? Remember that time? It must have been like 2016, and we were talking about going to go vote, and I was like, "Yeah, I got my ID ready." And you literally looked at me, and I remember this to this day. You said, "Why do you have your ID? You don't need your ID." I'm like, "Yeah, I do."
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I'm not. Well, I am. I'm like, dude. Like that's you live in your world, and I live in my world. My world is kind of like I'm just waiting for the next shoe to drop.
And I understand that.
But
I don't. But I understand that we have very different experiences.
I'm just waiting for somebody to say, "Are you really who you are?" Now, what I did notice when I voted today, not to the fault of the elected official, but the voter roll, because I'm registered at registered my polling place. I'm asked, "What's my name?" There's 20 Powells. There's 10 per page, and all the addresses are there. So I just had to match my first name. She pulls it up, puts it on my ballot, and says, "Can you verify your address?" But I could see my address on the label.
Kind of defeats the purpose.
So I'm like,
I mean, and really,
oh
like,
my
if
God,
you were going to vote for somebody else, like, you're not going to have their first and last name and address?
Exactly.
You're not going to ask me
I can
what,
see
my kindergarten teacher's first name was, or my mother's maiden name on my father's grandfather's side? Like,
I can see the argument for voting security in a sensible way, but not in an extreme way.
Part of the issue that we run into, as I know you're aware, is that requiring things like government-issued IDs end up, hurting or affecting non-whites at a much higher rate than it does white people, because white people have greater access to those things. They're more likely to have a driver's license or some sort of government-issued ID as opposed to non-whites. And so I'm with you in that, yes, again, sensible election security. Yes, I'm on board. Do I want to make it impossible for people to vote? No, that's not what
probably
we
not.
Need to do
That's
here.
not the.
Like, we need to make it as easy for as many people to vote while providing some level of basic security. I think that's, again, reasonable, sensible. These are words that should be associated with our governing policies, not extreme, liberal, crazy.
Crazy. Yeah, I don't want crazy
No.
at either extreme. So let's pause for a
Yeah,
restroom break.
that
I got to
sounds
take
good.
a leak. All right.
Okie dokie. Artichoke.
All right. So, and when we say reasonable and sensible, those are things that most people can get behind. But I kind of think, and not to go into too deep of a into this, but there were two things like videos I share with you, like number one, Common Core, and that kind of ties into like school board elections, and the second one was
Yeah,
like food
I
deserts.
watched both. The Common Core thing, I understand, because there are times when my daughter has come home with homework and shown me how her teacher showed her how to solve it, and I'm like, why are we making this complicated? Just stack these two numbers up and go, what's this minus this and this minus that? All right, borrow one from here. But I don't know. I mean, it's essentially, in a lot of ways, it's the same thing, just drawn out a little differently. Like, it's the same general principle.
Right.
And so it didn't take me long to really grasp what was going on. And maybe when we get into more difficult stuff, it would become an issue. I understand from a teacher's perspective of, I've taught this course and this curriculum for 10 years, and now you're telling me I have to completely upend all of my little tips and tricks because we have to make it a level playing field for everybody. Like, you're essentially, I don't see it. Common Core feels a lot like No Child Left Behind, right? Like, ultimately, we're trying to dumb things down to the lowest common denominator. And I use dumb things down. Dumb is not the word that I mean in that way. But, yeah, simplify it down to the lowest common denominator to assure that everybody can progress past these minimum standards at this rate, right? But what does that ultimately do for the children who aren't working at that pace, who excel beyond that, if we're not providing some either alternative path or some additional curriculum that helps them to get ahead as well? I mean, I don't know.
I'll tell you this. It kind of made me want to write out to the producers of CNBC, and we could probably put links to these things so you guys can see.
I've been trying to be better about that in the descriptions. I try to include links to videos or articles if they're specific things that we discuss.
Okay, and I'll make sure on the website that we definitely do that. But the I swear I'm right there.
Go ahead.
The two dots that I saw between, and they're kind of buried and nestled into the inside of the content of the videos. The food deserts, it's pretty blaringly obvious. So you must be intentionally trying to avoid this problem. But the educational one it actually ties to No Child Left Behind. Lower income families and people suffer the most. And that is if, for example, CNBC said, hey, let's look at our economy, let's look at our social structure, and the impacts of our economy and crime and what have you, you would see the same common threads. And that's what blew my mind. Like I'd say 3/4 of the way into the Common Core, what is it called?
Common Core.
Common Core. That's what came out, where you have underserved communities. And if you, like, ironically, the algorithm, yeah, it's like, so if we wanted to try to not solve those problems, but to progressively improve them, we would try to figure out how do we get these communities at the same or on a path to, like, rebuilding a foundation, education, sustenance, food. And we wonder why we have, like, and just in Chicago alone, and this year, 80% more homicides. 80%. Like, overall, was it Chicago? There was this. I was watching something, like some news report. I want to say it was Chicago.
Chicago's like a disaster, but right.
But why? Right. The question always goes back to, but why? And it may be like I was like doing something. I was actually making lunch today, and I was like, that just kind of makes me think that maybe Black Lives Matter. They may not be succeeding at their set objective, but they're making people have the conversation about some of the things that are wrong.
Which is good. I mean, that's a place to start.
And
right? I don't know what it was specifically. There was something recent, like the other day I was walking around, and I think I saw like a...
I'm sorry, it's Austin. No, Austin or Houston, one of those two cities.
But it was like, I think I saw like a Police Lives Matter, sticker or something like that, and it got me thinking about All Lives Matter and all of the retorts and our conversations in the past about like what you're striving for. We understand, but the phrasing, it's like defund the police. It's just kind of like you're not really helping your cause with the chant that you've kind of latched onto. And I almost think, like, looking back on it, obviously 2020 vision, like, All Lives Matter would have been or may have been a better phrase and mantle to take on at that point, because you're including everybody, right? As opposed to, and I get again why we ended up with Black Lives Matter, like the idea that they also matter, right? Like, Black Lives matter just as much as white lives or non-black lives, I guess. But I it's like, looking back on it now, you kind of go, well, yeah, we get that. Like, maybe if we'd have gone All Lives Matter, including Black lives, like, you get more people on board, you get more people behind your cause and to understand what it is. But I mean, I don't know.
So what? But like
Sure.
like play devil's advocate, right? And for the joke, because it's there. What would be the
response from the other side? I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out, right? But that's part of the argument. Is like, I feel like you serve it up to them when you say Black Lives Matter, right? Because immediately, whoa, Black Lives Matter, but white lives don't matter. Is that what you're trying to say? And it's like, no. And then you have to get into the nuance of explaining it, right? But if you say All Lives Matter, all lives matter, huh? What about rapists? Well, okay. Yeah, like, ultimately their life still matters in a sense. Like, what about serial killers?
But
like,
their behaviors don't. Their behaviors don't
exactly.
fit with our social norms.
I feel
right?
like there's much easier. That's much easier to fend off than where you end up with Black Lives Matter. I don't know. It's.
I don't disagree. I personally don't disagree, and I think that's kind of like what I'm getting at. It's like, look, I have a dog in that fight and that race. It's just a matter of, but what are you trying to accomplish?
Speaking of dogs.
And it's, gosh. I love one of my dogs, the other one not so much. Their sister or mother passed away a couple weeks ago. And I'm like, man, that sucks. But she was like 25.
She lived a good life.
Just like, Yeah, like, man, anyway, but my point being is like, and I'm going to tie into it. The next thing I was mentioning was politicians, Republicans and Democrats, they're like racing for the bottom of something. I don't know what they're racing for, like where that bottom is, but it's mind numbing. Like the issues that are affecting like everyday people, they avoid like the plague.
Because you can
On
actually get
purpose,
blamed for that.
intentionally.
How your decisions actually impacted somebody's life, right? But as long as we don't do anything that actually matters, then it's all just subjective whether or not what we're doing matters. Like, it becomes this subjective discussion where there are no numbers that you can ultimately tie to the performance of politicians, because all they're doing is freaking voting on stuff that ultimately doesn't make a difference one way or the other. At least that's my theory.
But you're probably not wrong. I just kind of get frustrated. I'm like, we talk about issues in the first video that actually the video with the food deserts, when Michelle Obama presented that plan, and you fast forward to 2015,
most
and they
had not upheld any of the commitments that they had made. So ultimately, like, what was the point, right?
When you talk about Common Core, then you fast forward to DeVos just saying it's a disaster. We're not addressing the issues of the American people, right? The things like what politicians like to call kitchen table like politics. The things that people that they discuss at dinner because it affects them. Gas prices, food prices. Those things they're never the issue. Infrastructure is big because it could produce jobs. But jobs are ancillary to the fact that you have floods in New Orleans or Louisiana.
Bridges in Statesville, North Carolina that literally have gaping holes in the middle of them.
Or snow in Texas.
It shuts down the entire private electric grid.
So I just kind of sit back and just think to myself, like, at what point do they actually... The long game for them, the long game for politicians, if that's the career path they want to take, is how do I put my heels in on issues that predicate things that affect people on a daily. Back to Dan Crenshaw, he said he's actually from the district that contains Houston, and he actually said it's a diverse place. But they just gerrymandered that whole district.
Yeah, it's diverse until you look at who their representatives are, and then look at the demographic breakup. Oh, right. Wow. Like, I mean, North Carolina, right? Like, the Republicans are still having to go back and redraw maps because the Republicans can't stop gerrymandering things by racial lines. Like,
my prediction is like two more cycles. And they become literally the dying, gasping party. It's just not. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, I guess just out of curiosity, I think I know what your answer will be, but just to get it on film, if Terry McAuliffe doesn't win in Virginia, does that mean that it's over for Democrats in 2022 and Joe Biden's presidency has been a complete failure? Like, I am so sick and tired of the Chicken Little news programming that I have to endure on a daily basis. Like,
that headline is so trite.
Biden's approval ratings are at an all-time low.
It's at 42%. Trump never got over like 42. I think it's consequential at some levels, right? You have like it's consequential in places like Virginia, to be honest with you. North Carolina, I know that even if I vote for Democrats like 4 times, it's going to be a Republican senator. I don't have to question that because our system here is it's broken beyond current repair. But I do believe, like, if it were me, my strategy would be screw West Virginia, screw Arizona. What other states are closer to becoming like contenders to push back the nonsense of the current GOP? And I'm not saying all GOP representatives, because I know like you have a Kinzinger, and that's probably, you have a Cheney. Although there's some things Liz Cheney says that I don't sign up for.
But at least you feel like to some degree they haven't completely sold their souls for political voting clout, right? Like that's where it feels like, I mean, like so many other people where it's like, I'll say anything to associate myself with Donald Trump until it starts impacting me negatively. Like, as long as I can reap the benefits of being associated with Trump, I'll kiss his ass. But if, I mean, you know, it's like, what is it? The guy that's running against McAuliffe up there, Yurkin or Youngkin, who
Youngkin,
basically has been like, I support, you know, the president, but please don't come to Virginia. For the love of God, stop saying my name. Like, I mean, the guy down here, Ted Budd, that's been running, you know, for, and everything is just
I'm sorry.
You know,
his commercial that he's got from Trump
in this
pisses me off, because Trump,
very special man, very special.
He gives him 100% of his endorsement. Like, how do you give somebody like 50% of your endorsement? He will
fight like hell, or like, he will fight like nobody. What does that even mean? What does nobody fight like? If nobody shows up to the fight, does the fight even happen?
Oh my God, it's so embarrassing, man.
And it's just,
and they keep running the commercial.
Oh, Trump is just, I don't get it. Like, I'm sorry. You know, like Joe Biden falling asleep at the G2 or G7 summit. Like, you know, I'm not sitting here like, dude's old. You know, honestly, like, is he my ideal president? No.
Dude, I fall asleep in church sometimes if I'm bored.
I'm 37, and if I had to fly across the country and meet with the Pope for an hour and a half the next day while some dude's kind of talking, I'd probably be like, I mean, it's not like he was snoring. It's not like he fell out of his chair. At least he didn't grope somebody or offend half of a country. Like,
I'm sorry. I just can't with the Bud guy. Like, when dude says I give him 100% of my endorsement, I'm like, that makes no sense to me. Like,
of the shit that comes out of that dude's mouth makes no sense. Like, it doesn't 100% of the time.
So anyway, I just think that our political system it's at a, I wouldn't say it doesn't work. I would say that there are opportunities for improvement.
We've hit a road bump,
but I do. We
bump.
have two presidential terms. Yeah, a speed bump. We have two presidential terms of dealing with the Republicans in their current state. Now, what I'm afraid of, or mindful of, is if they figure out a way to change their rhetoric to where they win national elections.
So this is the thing that I also don't understand about CNN and NBC and MSNBC and all, like, the other mainstream, you know, cable news networks, who just seem to be saying to the effect of, like, you know, all this Biden scrambling to get infrastructure plan in place, you know, and all this stuff, and it's like, you know, if Biden doesn't get this plan agreed to, then it's going to spell doom for the Democrats in the next election. I'm like, so you're telling me that the American voting public believes that because 48 Democrats couldn't agree or couldn't convince two wannabe GOPers to vote for this infrastructure plan that 79% of America wants, that the solution is to have less Democrats that support that, because somehow the GOP that is in its current form is going to magically give us all this stuff from the infrastructure plan that we want at a price tag of $0. Like, I don't understand this idea that somehow because the GOP is completely stonewalling and obstructing the Democrats from doing anything, that somehow that's a knock on the Democrats and their ability to get stuff done. Like, that logic makes no sense to me. I don't understand why that's being pushed as this.
It's a rating. It's a ratings
that
play.
I get, but if you have a thought in your head, how do you not see through that? How do you not go, that doesn't make any sense? There's no logic in that.
They're not placating to a reasonable person, right? So here's the thing and I want to move on from this because I'll get a headache. I don't want a headache. What's interesting is that the Democratic candidate in Virginia has already said through their internal polling and like the numbers they have banked X amount of votes to like be competitive in Virginia. What's interesting is that all the talking heads and pundits, they kind of like, they don't play to that, right? Most people, and we saw this with Trump being elected, they vote in private. They don't talk to pollsters, blah, blah, blah. And I'm kind of thinking that because me personally, I've stopped watching the news as much. I'll read like an article, I'll do full coverage of an article because I don't want to watch CNN, I don't watch MSNBC. I don't watch NBC because I hate, was it Craig Todd?
Oh, Chuck Todd.
Or who's
He's
the
awful.
Chuck Todd? I hate him. I don't hate him. I dislike him enough to where I've discounted my belief in NBC because of him. Because if you can employ somebody like that on purpose, I don't trust you. So I say all that to say this. I believe that the internal numbers that people, like reputable people that have skin in the game are saying, they may be right. So if the Democrats lose Virginia by like up to 5%, it proves my theory of we may have like 2 more presidential terms, like 8 years, right, of dealing with the current state of the GOP. It'll force, if they lose national elections, like for senators and things of that nature. Actually, I hate that term now because somebody keeps overusing it. But if they can't get a senator elected for the next 2 terms, it's going to make them like choose a platform and move on. And it'll leave Trump in the cold. If he's alive the next 4 years, then that's a blessing that, you know, he's deserving of for some unknown reason. But we just have to make it through the next 2 terms to force a different political landscape. And with that, the last thing I want to say about politics is the judge in the
victims is a loaded,
Kyle Rittenhouse case
is a loaded phrase, just like Kyle Rittenhouse's gun was loaded when he pulled the trigger.
I like the joke there. But this is in the attorneys in that case, the prosecuting attorneys. And then we're going to move on. Because I want to get through our list next. I think we can do it. I believe if they do this one ninja move, here's a ninja move. Don't say victim. Say person killed.
Yeah. It's not,
Easy peasy.
I would be upset if the prosecutors in that case let something like that be the thing that is, you know, the difference between. It's not that big of a deal. Like ultimately, you have other and yes, do I understand like why such a big deal is being made about it, because it makes for a great headlines, right? But beyond that, like, can we just let's move on. Like, just let the case run its course. We'll find out what happened. I mean, I don't.
Or don't say victim killed or person killed. Say the person's name.
Yeah.
When Kyle Rittenhouse shot, put their name in there. If I'm a juror, I'm much more attached to that than victim. And I wouldn't even say, well, when you shot the victims, I would actually name when you shot blank, 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 and blank. what was going through your mind. Just
You
saying.
should probably
Never
make
been
a
to law
pretty
school,
decent
but semantics. Oh man, let's go to pop culture.
Pop culture.
Dude, I totally nailed that one. So, if you're watching live, I
Who the hell
actually
is
did the
watching
pop
live?
culture thing and timed it perfectly. Or watch it. Nobody.
We're not
Maybe-
ready for that.
Yeah,
level of
you're
pressure
right.
Yet.
Apparently, because I had to like switch computers like 3 times. So
That makes
I
two
haven't
of us.
watched Kyle Kaepernick's show on Netflix, but I believe it's something black and white. But yo, people are coming at dude. And the thing like my wife watched it. She said I gotta watch it, and I'm like, yeah, I do, but I have other stuff going on. I was also told about the Wu-Tang joint on Hulu by my other dude in my circle. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like totally like, yeah, I'm gonna watch it. I'm like,
Yeah.
when I get like whittled down my list. But he's catching a lot of heat because he's saying that the NFL draft is akin to slaves being sold
No
on the
shit.
slave
Like,
block.
who's actually arguing with this? It's literally the same thing. Get out here in your underwear, perform some tasks that literally have nothing to do with what we're ultimately going to want you for, and then we get to poke and prod and measure and compare and sit back and talk about you at the end of the day. Like, and then what do? We get to decide your worth based on where we draft you in the NFL draft. I mean, I'm sorry, if you don't see the correlation between the two, it's because you are ignorantly, willfully ignoring history, logic, your eyes, and what they are telling you. Like, I'm sorry. That's literally like, there's nothing that isn't a really good correlation between those two things. There's just not. I mean, like, college athletics in general, to me, like, South Park did a whole episode where they literally had Cartman dressed up as like a southern plantation owner going into the local like university and talking about, so how do you get away with all of this? And they're like, well, we call them student athletes. And they're like, oh, I like that, student athletes, you know, like, because it's the whole thing is just, it is another way to exploit a predominantly non-white workforce. Like, I mean, college athletics in particular, where you're not getting paid, right?
I'm super glad you said that. You know why I really don't watch the draft?
I'm so glad I was spot
because
on.
of that. I was like 12 years old, and I was watching my first NFL draft, and I think my dad was there, and I felt so uneasy about it. And when I was like 15, like he was like, yeah, let's watch the draft, and I was like, all right, and I didn't want to do it. And I was like, oh, I got homework to do. You know why? And I'm 45. So 12 for me is a long time ago. I applaud Colin Kaepernick for saying that's why. I'll just tell you, like, and forget the naysayers. Sure, they get to, and some the people's arguments are like, but they get to become millionaires. Okay. Are you? That's you're. If a man gains the world, but and he loses his soul, what has he gained? Right? I'm not okay with that. I just can't sign. Like, I was like 12, maybe 11. I was fairly young, but I've never like watching the draft just because of that.
Yeah.
It is a slave auction.
I mean, it's not like I watched it the first time and went, oh, wow, slave auction. You know? Like, but eventually, yeah.
Dude, I watched Roots when I was like 8 years old. So man, you don't have a black card. But I'm saying, like, for me, it's like I watched Roots. So my first time watching the draft, that's what I felt, and I've never watched it since. And for anybody to say, "Well, you don't understand," they get to be millionaires. That's not important to me. It's like, tell me how that's different from like a
That's
slave
not the
auction.
point.
Well, there's white players there also.
Like,
Yeah,
there were times where there were white slaves too, right?
exactly.
If you're not listening,
if you're like,
hearing this.
I'm not saying like it. it, if you're, I applaud Colin Kaepernick for saying that because I respect that. And if I'm being honest, my like 11, 12, let's just say between 10 and 12, and I'm 45. I've never watched a college draft since that first one I watched because I thought it was disgusting. Like, I don't like the fact that you call them owners of a team. Like, I just don't like that. I just can't. I can't wrap my head to accept the fact that we call, like, yeah, they own the team, but when you connect, for me to connect the two in my mind and my psyche, I'm just like, yeah, I'm good, hard pass. Like, I just don't care. So yeah. Anyway, I gotta watch that joint. But I did see the article. I was looking through Google News. Yo,
What is she doing?
Kim
Pete
Kardashian
Davidson?
and Pete Davidson.
I mean,
Yo, apparently he's got the magic
must be
stick.
something about that, like, weird. I'm depressed, but I'm somewhat confident in my depression. You know,
I don't like his stand-up. Like, I'll be honest. Like, I watched his special he did in San Francisco on
I like this
Netflix,
stand-up. I thought it was.
and I laugh. I mean, look, dude's from Staten Island. Yo, so Pete, you're never gonna listen to this, but I'm just gonna say it. I think you're funny. I think your stand-up, like for me, the way you tell the story doesn't flow very well. I get the jokes. I just don't think they flow very well because I'm always thinking about, oh, you said it earlier. I love Pete Davidson. I watch SNL
And Pete
for the weekend update and to see if Pete Davidson is going to be in a sketch. So I rock with you that way. I don't really rock with Machine Gun Kelly. I think he's a herd. No offense, whoever. Like, I literally. Here's my one and only Machine Gun Kelly story. I heard he had beef with Eminem.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Who's this kid? And I listened to his verses, and I'm like, yo, he's corny, yo, right? And I like my one of my nieces came home to visit us. We had dinner, and she was saying how she's a big fan of Machine Gun Kelly. I'm like, all right, that's cool. I said, but honestly, I didn't know who this kid was, but I heard he was trying to go at Eminem. I don't like him, and I watched every battle he's trying to have with Eminem. I'm like, yo, you're corny, yo. Like, I don't care. So. That's it. So I still don't know who Machine Gun Kelly is. So
either, right? The things that I do know about him are that he's currently dating Olivia Wilde, right? And that, or I think, yeah,
so?
I know. That's about it. Oh, and that when they first met, he told her, "I am weed," because she said, "You smell like weed." So apparently, he smokes a lot of weed. Well. I see what you did there.
That makes him dope.
I don't even think you saw what you did there, but I saw what you did there. So, like, Machine Gun Kelly to me, he started out his music career as, like, a pop kind of guy, right? Like, he was in, like, some pop band or something like that, playing guitar. And then he decided he wanted to go, like, hardcore rap or, you know, whatever you want to categorize. Kinda.
So he's like the new Kid Rock.
I wouldn't even say. I would say Kid Rock is more talented than Machine Gun Kelly. But like, I just don't care. Like, this dude is like Jake Paul. He's the Jake Paul of the music industry.
Oh, yeah, he's like the Jake Paul of the rap
in my mind,
game.
he's like this guy who thinks that he's something, and for some reason, some people pay attention to him. You know, or like Tekashi 6ix9ine, you know, or this other, who is the guy, Young Gravy?
He's
the super corny white dude that like goes out and raps in his white bathrobe. It's like Lil Dicky, but cornier and worse. Like I don't have, yeah.
I'll give
You can. That's
I'll
the
give
thing.
Lil
Like,
Dicky this.
at the
That
end of the
kid
day,
can flow.
if you can
Like,
write good lyrics,
he's not a
and good
bad
rhymes, like,
lyricist.
I'm here for whatever, like, your personality stuff. I don't really care. But like at the end of the day, you got to be able to back it up, and that's where, you know, like Logan Paul and Jake Paul and these like wannabe boxer dudes, go fight a real boxer, right? And then maybe I'll be like, all right, you can box, but stop coming out here and fighting bums that aren't boxers.
He called them bums. You know? Some of these dudes will like thrash you, B. Like I'm not gonna, like I'm not. I'll be the first one to say this. Yo, I'm 45. And
I feel like I'm watching these old Kimbo Slice
kid,
videos where it's
but
just grabbing some dude off the street and be like, "You need a sandwich?
Yeah,
this dude knock you out." No, I know.
Yeah,
I mean, like, look,
but like real talk in my prime, yo, Jake, Logan Paul, y'all meet you outside, B. Like it's not a thing.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like
you're in your prime.
By the way, this is
like,
not my prime. My prime was at least 10 years ago. At least.
I'm like Sunset, but I would definitely like yo. I think, but I do give Pete Davidson this. Yo, he went at your boy Logan Paul or whichever one.
He climbed to his face
him on SNL. I thought that was hilarious.
Like, and I don't even think like Dave or Pete Davidson afterwards, I think was kind of like, oh, that was kind of harsh, but like because he didn't even realize, he was like, all right, whatever. Like, yeah.
Like I saw the SNL joint with Kim Kardashian. I've never been like a fan, and it's just because like I never watched their reality joint.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Because it's not interesting. But yo, Shorty's fine. Yeah, I was like watching with my wife. I'm like, yo, Shorty's kind of cute. So I can see why Pete Davidson is like.
Yeah, I mean,
apparently he's got the magic stick.
Yeah.
And yo, Pete, you do you.
Ye.
I heard
Ye. He changed his
what,
name.
Kanye. I'm gonna call him Kanye.
We all did it for P Diddy and Sean Puffy Daddy Combs. Puffy.
I didn't. I still call him
Daddy,
Puffy.
P Diddy.
I always call him Puffy. I'm not gonna call him P Diddy.
I know.
Yeah. No disrespect, but it's like, Ye got mad, but
because apparently it doesn't look good in God's eyes. That's what he said. You wearing that fucking white?
You know it doesn't look good in God's eyes. You're crazy. And you're rocking with Marilyn Manson, the weekend Satanist. I mean, come on, yo. Like Kanye, you gotta. Like, I want Kanye back from like
late registration.
Like the
That's
old.
Where after that it all fell apart.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying he didn't make good music after that. I'm just saying that I think late registration was when it all kind of like when his vision of how people saw him started to match his own vision.
Because
I'm sorry.
You kids.
What do you mean?
People kept saying.
People?
Okay, people. That's I try to reel that back in.
Who encouraged us
you people.
Ye did himself.
You guys kept saying you guys kept saying he was a genius. I'm like, he's not even that good of a lyricist.
I don't know. A generation.
What generation? Who cares?
Yeah.
The
1920s.
Yeah, just pick any random one. It wasn't mine.
I think I've told this story
corny.
on here before, right? Like, I saw him live at UNCW, like one of the whitest schools you could possibly go to. I was not attending UNCW. I just had my girlfriend who was on there.
I mean, I've been to parties at every school in the ACC.
So
Great parties.
But anyways, I saw him
at
this show, and it was the worst concert I've ever been to. Not because like he couldn't perform. Happens to everybody. He chose not to. Like, he stopped the middle of a song to correct the spotlight guy. To be like, yo, if I'm rapping, the camera should be on me. But if it's not, it needs to be on the DJ over here. All right, let's start it over. And okay. And then he literally sat for 10 minutes and played like 15-second clips of songs that he produced. Not didn't perform them, but just sat there and played 50 seconds and be like, yeah, y'all remember that one? I produced that. Play another one. Y'all remember that one? I produced that.
Like real talk, I think it was, you can bleep his name out, John Walter.
Yeah,
that told me
that
he was
like
a genius.
I
was like, what?
The thing that stood out to me the most was that he was when he performed Gold Digger, right? Right. And he gets to the chorus.
Yeah, that was a dope song.
And he goes through the first time and he stops the song. He's like, oh, hold up. This is all y'all white kids' only chance to say the N-word without getting in trouble for it. So I want to hear you scream it. And then, like, started the chorus over again. And there were a lot of white people shouting the N-word at that moment. I still wasn't one of them because yeah.
You abstained. Yeah, that's like
I was just like, I mean, like,
How about no? Like, I mean, so I'm not upset. Maybe, like, I'm not gonna be mad at Pete Davidson. Pete Davidson, you're not listening, but
yeah, I mean, like, look, at the end of the day,
you do you be.
They're separated, right? Like,
They're separated.
What it is.
Now, and I heard Shorty bought the house back, so it don't even matter, yo. So she's caking on dude. So like, I don't have a dog in that fight. I don't wish divorce on anybody because I know it's a terrible experience as a survivor. But like I saw when I saw the article, I was like, "Yo, all right, you do you be."
I just
like,
thought it was
who cares?
more funny.
You know, he's from Staten Island.
Like, I think it's hilarious what a big deal people make about it.
I think it's
and
hilarious.
How Pete Davidson somehow keeps finding himself in the middle of like Hollywood romance stories that everybody wants to know about. Like,
yeah, he's like, I mean, I'm telling you, dude must have the magic stick. I think I'm just telling you, man. Now, 50, like, I'm not even opening that door because I'm not built like that, yo.
Hey,
like, I'm not trying to have beef with
listening,
50. Like, even on a
mad respect.
even in a.
Oh,
even,
man, I mean,
even in a joke, like, yo, I'm not built like that.
Voice of a generation. 50 Cent. 50 Cent.
I was. I mean, he's dope. I used to, 50. I used to buy all your mixtapes. So like, I was on the 50 before. So
what
like,
you're saying is you're a black
like white America was. So like I.
I was into it before anybody else was.
That's how you get punched in the mouth, B. Like,
yeah.
All right. So anyway, next I saw Dune. I will say this: it's better than the 1984 version. I saw that, and actually, I lived in Europe at the time, and I saw it in the theater. It was dope in the theater in 1984. I watched it in my living room, and it's bananas. Yep. But you have to, it's like one of those movies you have to pay attention to. And if you've never read the books, which I haven't, or seen the original, like,
so that was one of the things. Because I would like to see
it's a homework
visually.
movie.
The trailers have made it look very good. But
dope.
I've never seen the original, and I have never read the books, and so I just wasn't sure. I mean, I'm going to sit down and watch it at some point, but I was debating, like, do I need to have a basic understanding of things before I go into it, or is enough of it explained in the movie that I can get through without it? So it sounds like I need to do a little bit, at least a little bit.
It's
watch like the Cliff Notes version of the 1984 movie,
or just like watch it and just like realize you're setting yourself up for the second or the sequel, right? So it's 2.5 hours. It's dope. It's I wouldn't say a visual masterpiece, but it's like visually compelling. And I think the story's kind of choppy-ish, but it's a good movie. people die. I'm like, yo, they kill dude just like
I
that.
enjoy
But
it
it's a
too,
good
so
movie.
One of our movie reviews
and you have to watch it with the
about how much a movie sucks. Because apparently other people get offended and like call me Captain Killjoy and stuff like that because I don't like any movie that I see anymore. I mean, it's.
Oh, really?
It is what it is.
Yeah, well, I'll still say this:
F9?
Fast 9 or
F
F9 or whatever. That movie's garbage. They should take that off. Like, and I got no beef with Vin Diesel, except for the fact that he's an action star, and he's like the.
I thought he only made family
I don't
movies.
know. Man, he makes some shitty. All right, let's talk about technology.
Let's talk about technology.
So, Mastodon, yo, it looks like the fringe right was listening to the Chris and Andre Show podcast and decided that they wanted to, or they were capable of, creating their own social media platform.
Well, I mean,
not working out.
Creating is probably a bit of a stretch. Stealing another open source platform and not providing access to it as is required by the Common Creatives license that you use it under.
Right.
That's probably a much more accurate phrase. Yeah, I mean,
they're about to lose their cookies.
It's so stupid.
Like,
everything about it is stupid. You stole software that requires you to. Well, you didn't steal it, but you used software.
They did not. They did not steal it.
Creative Commons. This licensing agreement says that you have to make the software available to other people. You have to make your code base available, right?
You have to make your code base.
They don't want to do that.
Right.
Understandably so in some regards, right? Like, but then you shouldn't have used an open source platform to build it off of that required you to do that.
In the immortal words of Jay-Z via Joe Pesci, sorry, you gotta bleep this.
I got
Fuck
99
you, pay
problems,
me.
but the Creative Commons license for the open source software that I chose ain't one.
It's actually GPL 3, but I'm not going to nitpick. But it's literally in the immortal words. You got to bleep this. I'm going to give you like the little like tags. Joe Pesci via Jay-Z, fuck you, pay me. And Trump.
Well, of course,
his
they
people
don't understand the second part.
So I'm not going to say it's
they
him.
Understand the first part plenty. It's when it comes time to pay. That's where everybody starts looking around, going, "Oh, I thought the Cheeto had this." Like, it's just.
I mean, so the Truth Network or whatever the hell they're calling it. It's
just like Parler.
It's DOA.
I mean, I know it's not even like for the same reasons, but ultimately, you can't pitch a social media platform on free speech that ultimately restricts free speech. Like, it's not. You're not going to achieve what you think you are,
dude. Dude, literally
don't talk
his
crap
TOS
about my platform.
Was saying like,
right?
Yeah, it's not technically your platform. Number one, number two.
The first rule of Fight Club is you can't say mean things about Fight Club, guys. Okay, we worked really hard to put this club together, and if you're just gonna like criticize us while we're here, then we're just not gonna have these meetings anymore. Okay.
Yo, Trump is a Becky, yo. He's a straight up Becky. It's like, my dude, like, what are you doing? Like, first of all, nobody cares about him. Like, he's a waning thought in people's minds, and he's getting by. He's not even successful. He's getting by on the last 18 months
and on his impending
notoriety
threat of running for office again. Like, he's dangling it out there just enough that he can continue to campaign on it and raise money because the dude's broke.
Oh, he's got like a couple billy off of.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's not, and he's got all of these civil lawsuits that are pending, and now criminal lawsuits that are pending against him. So it's all just, I mean, it's all little, he's hoping to just play it out, and it's what he always does, right? Just string it out, just delay, object, and try and hope that you are somehow able to extend your credit just a little bit more than the other party.
Well, that's like your dude Elon Musk, he's saying he's going to give $6 billion to end world hunger, provided that.
Look, guys, I'll solve this big problem if you can prove that me solving it would actually solve it.
Yo, Tesla fanboys, get at me, dog. Yo, Tesla fanboys. Your boy is a corn dog clown. I cannot with Elon Musk.
$50 million
like, if you guys
to the World Hunger Fund, right? Boom. 0.5% of Tesla's sales for next year. For every Tesla car we sell, I'll donate $500 to the World Hunger Fund or whatever it is. But no, he's got to zip flop. Put his junk on the table and go, well, I've got $6 billion I'll give you right here if you can lift my junk off the table.
I swear on my right toe. I'm not kidding you. So my wife wants a new car, and I was looking at a Tesla. And I was seriously, doing the math and figuring out how to make it work. When he made that statement, I was like, I'm not giving you a penny, that's how much I just can't, man. I can't with Elon Musk, man. And fanboys, get at me. Andre at chrisandandreshow.com.
And when his inbox fills up,
get at me and tell me why I'm wrong.
Comments at chrisandandreshow.com and also Chris at chrisandandreshow.com.
But get at me and tell me why I'm wrong. But if you knew, and this is a hypothetical, walk with me on this journey, right? You're growing up in this neighborhood. There's a bully on the street, an unbeknownst bully. He doesn't flex on the people. He's just kind of sizing people up and seeing what they would or would not do. That's Elon Musk. But the reason why he's a bully is not because he's the badass. It's because of his older brother. His older brother is the federal government. The only reason why Tesla cars are actually even getting on the street is because of tax credits. So please, somebody tell me how Elon Musk is that dude.
He can sell $6 billion in Tesla stock tomorrow to solve world hunger, but he did it all himself.
And Elon, if you're listening, if you ever hear this, get at me. Tell me. I'd love to have you as a guest. Help me understand your position, because the way you come off, and I'm going to give you I'm going to give the general econ 101. You can fool some of the people some of the times, but you can't fool all the people all the time. The gimmick that you're playing, it only gets you so much. So do you have an exit strategy on Tesla? Do you have an exit strategy on any of the companies that you own? And I'm just going to push back and say, I don't think it's that. Your game is not that strong. You're right. One of our number one videos is Tesla fanboys,
or facts and reality, or
whatever.
Something like that.
I don't. Yeah. And this is part 2. You guys literally I don't hate success. I think success is warranted. I think what Tesla's done for electric cars is warranted, 100%. You made them not Priuses, because I will never drive a Prius. But it's not that important. At the end of the day, you're going to be the number one attractive electric car, electric vehicle, but you're like, where's your
Still
Tesla
working on
truck?
the bulletproof
right?
windows.
Like, I want a truck. Yeah, like you're like smashing joints up with like a baseball bat. But the challenge is like, can you call it for what it is? And I think your gimmicks they're not that cute, man. You're literally the bully that's not the bully, because what people respect and or fear about you is because you're big brother. It's not you.
I would agree.
So get at me. So I don't.
Gosh.
I mean, $6 billion. That's a lot of change. I don't have that.
Vote. Tell him to freaking pause it and go and freaking vote. You got 10 minutes.
I already voted. So we gotta like edit that. So
That's not going anywhere.
Jesus Christ. She like totally like came in and tried to hijack my spot.
You only got like 10 minutes. They're gonna close. You're like, "Oh, voted."
So my point being, like, look, like Tesla fanboys, don't be a fanboy for a guy that's a joke. Also, he's a wannabe bully, and if I work for the what organization is that, the World Hunger Fund?
Oh, I think that's right.
Or sure, whatever that is. I would
There was
call him
some
out.
response.
Like,
I didn't see what
so
the
I
guy
saw
said.
that they tweeted and said, "This is a good conversation to start. What are the next steps?" Basically, and I'm like, "Nah, I would have all those bullet points. Like, this is how, dude." Anyway, let's talk about social media.
Vote.
We do, because I already voted.
All right, we're gonna make this one quick because I'm gonna start getting texts and phone calls if I don't show up at home at some point. But lucky you.
I'm not scared.
That makes one of us.
So I mentioned this earlier, and I have started to prune my Google News feed because that's important to me. The crappy part is, even on YouTube, I've started to do more surveys of and actually try to stop seeing the same ads or ads that are not relevant to me.
It is. It's
What
a
a
huge
chore.
pain.
Gosh. What a chore. But I noticed in my newsfeed, I kept seeing Celebrity X wears this to a Halloween costume party. I don't care. Like, why are you showing that to me? Or I would get advertisements for colonoscopies. Yo, internet, are you calling me old? Stop doing that. I don't want to see that. And the reason it says this ad is displaying because of your age. I'm like,
I don't understand
yes,
what
I
your
know,
complaint
but
is on that last one there. You're like, I clearly fall into this specific age range and demographic and meet the requirements for the ad they were trying to show me, and yet I don't want to think about my colonoscopy. I mean, no, I get it. I mean, because really, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you're being helpful, but there's a point where I don't want you to be that helpful. And my colonoscopy is probably one of those things where, as you know, I recently I got dog training service because just Cerberus in particular had been very, very difficult. Yeah. And so,
wilding out.
Well, he was wilding out.
Say it, wilding out.
Like Nick Cannon.
Say it. There we go.
No, he had a show called Wildin' Out.
No, you gotta take that back and just say Wildin' Out.
Okay, apparently I'm the crazy one. Because I'm keeping up with Nick Cannon's television career post Mariah Carey. Daddy, he's hilarious.
Sure, Nick Cannon. What? Oh my gosh, what'd you do? Oh my gosh. Chris. What happened? I was scared. We gotta record the whole thing over.
We were talking about Nick Cannon. Wiling out, right? Who was wiling out? Cerberus was wiling out. So, like, I had called a couple of different places looking for dog training, and the first place was like, oh, yeah, we do a 3-week training board program that's $3,000. And I'm like, oh, my God. Like, I love my dog, but I don't have $3,000 to spend on his training. Like, I don't have $3,000 to spend when he needs an emergency surgery, let alone, like, I want my dog to not be a total psychopath so I can actually enjoy my time with him around other people. But then, like, a couple of months later, all of a sudden on Facebook, I think I saw an ad, and it was for, like, Peace of Mind puppy training. And I'm like, I don't know why, but there was something about it, and I clicked the link, and it was like, just fill out this little thing, and the lady called me, and it's local, you know, like, she was using Facebook advertising to try and reach some more clients, but she's been great. Like, I've had an amazing experience. And so it's like, on one side, I appreciate and understand the value in, like, relevant ad placements, you know, and that sort of thing. But there is, like, a line where I'm like, y'all are getting too creepy with this stuff. It's the stuff where, you know, like, a conversation is had where I don't have my phone out, and then the next ad I see is for the thing I was just talking about. And I'm like, I know that it's not exactly that you were listening, but you had enough information to be able to understand that that was something I might be interested in seeing, when I've literally given no indication other than these other things that correlate to what these other people did, which then just gets into the whole, like, am I living in a computer simulation, or... You know,
Jesus,
no,
don't go there.
I don't actually believe that.
Okay. Well, I don't want you to get in trouble. And according to my wife,
you need to go vote.
Like, I'm glad that I already voted. I voted, like, this morning. I was there early. And I even got breakfast at McDonald's. Yeah, which actually, by the way, was not a bad experience.
You missed earlier before, so, like, I logged on 45 minutes early to test some lighting and other stuff, and then I started playing my music, and I started recording it because I was singing and dancing, and so I saved it as Chrisioke, and so I don't know when I'm going to use it, but I'm going to find some excuse to, like, at the end of an episode, it's just going to be, like, me sitting there singing and dancing some ridiculous songs.
Jesus Christ. Well, that's a perfect time to wrap this up. We're super glad you joined us. If you're watching this on YouTube, just want to say please subscribe and hit the notification icon, the bell, so that way you can get notifications when we upload new content. Also, we're on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and always for the adventurous people, we have an RSS feed that you can plug into your favorite RSS reader.
RSS is short for really super slick.
Yeah. I personally use Plex. And maybe we'll do an episode about Plex because I really do enjoy Plex.
Not the illegal stuff, though, and for those of you wondering. It's all above board.
You want federal charges, Chris? That's how people get federal charges. So we're super glad you joined us, and we try to do this every week. I've just unloaded a lot of the heaviest stuff in my head for the week, so I'm good for another 6 or 7 days.
I have to listen to all of this again as I go through and edit and record, or edit and publish it. So you're welcome, America.
Well, if you have any comments or you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, you can always send us an email at comments@chrisandandreshow.com. Visit our website at chrisandandreshow.com. I'm Andre at chrisandandreshow.com, and
I'm Chris at chrisandandreshow.com. I know that pause seemed really unnecessary, but for some reason, every time I go to edit, when I get to the end of the podcast and you're like, I'm Andre, and I say, and I'm Chris, it's always like at the same time. I swear, it's like mine plays at just this slightly faster pace than yours, and for some reason we get to the end and it's like, I'm Andre, and I'm Chris. Like, it just sounds like I can't wait to shout my name over top of you. And so, like, even last week I was like, I'm going to pause, I'm going to give it a moment before, and it's still, I swear, I got to the end and it was like, I'm on, and I'm Chris. And I was just like, ah! Sorry. That's just... These are the things that go through my head while I'm recording and publishing and editing podcasts every week.
Oh man! And I hopefully by next week I figure out my
Oh my God,
tech
you
issues
better. This
because
is awful. I don't get to look at Spider-Man or Iron Man.
I know, right?
I have this weird bag thing on the wall. I don't know what that is.
Oh,
All
right. So let me tell you what that is. My daughter made that in second grade, and it has been on my wall since second grade. I also have like a pin holder. It's a coffee cup, but it's not acceptable as a coffee cup. But I have pins. I keep those in there that one of my sons made me on my bookshelf over there. Wow, that's interesting. And I also have my Incredible Hulk mug. My youngest son got that for me many, many years ago. He had to be probably 6 or 7. And he went there with his grandparents, and he came back to my house for the weekend. He's like, "Oh, Dad, I got you a gift." And I still have that mug to this day. And he's like, "Dad, you're my hero." So here's my Andre sentimental moment, okay? Obviously, technically, my ex-wife and I are divorced, and my youngest son has always looked to me as his hero until he got older. Then he was like, "I hate you." Or no, he didn't say "I hate you," but he had questions. But it's been cool to talk to him because it's kind of like full circle, where I was like, every kid looks at their parents as their hero for the most part. And for me, it's just a reminder that as parents, we do the best we can do with what we know. And if we stay on that course, it always comes full circle. So, when I drink out of that coffee mug, I just think about my son in that day because he was so excited to give me that. Like, when I say excited, he was like super amped to be like, "Get that, Dad, you got to get this, open this box." And I'm like, all right. So ever since then, I kept that mug, and I used to bring it to work all the time. And it just reminds me of my son a lot. And the box. Wait for it. And so I have like 3 or 4 things in my office, actually 5, where there are things that my kids gave me, and I'm a little bit older, and it just always, helps me to kind of stay grounded and stay focused on the right thing. So if you get to see that box in the version, maybe we can do some like pan and zoom when we talk about this. But that's why it's there. So to my awesome, beautiful, smart daughter, thank you. And I think she knows how important it is because it's been up there for years. And a few weeks ago, she wrote me a sticky note, and I hate sticky notes, and she put it on my desk. And so here it is. So I keep it on my desk to remind me that my kids love me, and it melts my heart every time I see it. So, at any rate, we're glad you joined us. We are we'll continue to do this because it's fun, and I already voted. Because if I didn't, that's how important it is in my house, is that we harass each other, sometimes threaten. But as always, I'm Andre. Pause.
And I'm Chris.
We'll talk to you next time.
I was going to make sure this
You're such a fool.
I'm 100% sure. I'm not doing that.